What's up, y'all? So if you watched my last video, you know I talked about the top 5 best animal species to make into fursuit pre-mades. So this video is going to be talking about the top 5 worst animals to make into fursuit pre-mades. So with that, let's get started. So before I begin, I want to give the biggest disclaimer, and that is I do not hate any animal on this list. In fact, I probably love every animal on this list more than I love any of the animals on the other list, because that's just how I am. I mean, my fursona is a dragon, it's a reptile, and the other fursuits I own are an elephant and a possum. So I am very much not canine, not feline kind of person. In fact, my upcoming suits that I'm planning to make for myself are horse, unicorn, and bird. So I'm very much a non-traditional, I guess, fursona kind of person. So I love every single animal that's going to be on this list. But this list is being made because unfortunately I seem to be in the minority of that group, at least in terms of wanting to wear these species as fursuits. I hope I didn't give away too much of who's going to be on this list by that, but I'm sure you probably figured it out what kind of species are going to be on this list after seeing what kind of species were on the other list. So yeah, that's just how it is. As similar with the other list, I'm going to be going in the same, 5 is the bottom of the list and number 1 is, the worst in this case. And I'm also going to be going over what the animal is, why makers don't like to pick them or design them, and why people don't buy them. So now that we have all that out of the way, let's begin the list. Number 5 on the list is going to be domestic cats. If you watch the other list, you see that this is kind of like, a direct opposite of what number 5 on the best-selling list was. But yeah, domestic cats. I'm sure you all know exactly what a domestic cat is. Speaking of which, it's a domestic kitty. Say hi, little bee. She loves you. I really don't think I have to explain what domestic cats are. They're the smaller counterpart of the wild cats. They rival dogs in popularity for pets. And yeah, they're kitties. Everybody loves kitties. Why don't makers like to design them? I would argue that this is probably one of maybe 2 species on this list that makers actually do like to design. I mean, who doesn't like to design a cat? They're fun. Domestic cats, much like big cats, you can have a lot of fun with their natural color design because, as you know, domestic cats come in a lot of different colors. Like, as you saw, mine's black, but you have like tabbies, you have orange kitties, you have tortoise shell, I think that's how you say it. So a lot of domestic cat natural patterns can be pretty fun to design, as well as you can get fun with unnatural colors as well, adding them as accents or just making you a straight up Lisa Frank cat. So, however, this is not a video about why cats are fun to design. This is why they don't sell, and that is one of the reasons that makers probably design them less. And going directly into that, why don't people buy them? Well, I think domestic cats are, again, one on this list that might be a little exception. They're not unsellable, I will say that right now, but they're definitely not as popular as some of the other cat species out there. I will generally always see a tiger selling over, like a common house cat fursuit. And I'm not entirely sure why that is, but I think it just has to do with the fact that big cats are probably just more popular. It's kind of those things where they're both liked, but one just is slightly better, I guess how you want to say it like that. There are people out there who love cats and they will shell out for cats, especially domestic cats, because they're cat people. But those people are kind of a select few, and so compared to the people out there who generally all kind of like big cats, the domestic cat group is fewer and far between, thus making them a harder sell when they are made as pre-mades, tying back into the fact that makers don't design as much, and you get the gist. But yeah, number 5, domestic kitties. Again, they're not unsellable, so probably if you wanted to pick one species on this list that might get you a little more money than others, make a cat. Okay, number 4 on the list. This and the next 3 entries are gonna kind of be more of groupish kind of animals. I don't mean animals that live in groups, but I mean it's gonna be kind of like groups of animals. So, number 4 on this list is going to be equines. Now, if you don't know what an equine is, it is a hooved animal, but more specifically, it is generally an animal with, a single hoof. So when I talk about equines, I mean like horses, donkeys, zebras, those kind of thing, mainly the horse family. For this specific spot, I'm going to generally be talking about horses, But keep in mind that things like donkeys and zebras also apply. I don't think I really have to explain what a horse is either. They're another super common animal out in the world. They are big and they go neigh. Why don't makers like to design them? Well, this is spoken from a personal standpoint. I love horses. I love them. As I said earlier in the video, I am planning to have a horse fursuit in the future, and I just love horses. I don't even know why. I just love them. I don't even ride them. I'm planning to, but I have actually struggled pretty hard to make a personal horse character of my own because, how do I want to say this? Horse natural colors are, I don't exactly know how I want to put this. It's kind of like saying a horse's natural colors are not hard to design, but if you don't do it just right, it looks wrong. And you don't know why it looks wrong, but it just does. I have designed many a horse character in an attempt to find my main horse character, and they just look like natural horses, but just something in them looked off. And because of that, I would like to say that horse characters are actually a little more difficult to design. Because, yes, you can just slap brown and like black hooves and like a white stripe and say, hey, it's a horse, because yes, it is a horse. But something about that is just kind of like unappealing in my opinion. Just because it's so, boring, I guess you could say. There's so many ways to make interesting horse colors, especially with their natural colors. But I feel like it takes a fine eye and a real knowledge of what a really pretty natural colored horse looks like to do it, and not everyone has that. And of course, if you go colorful with horses, then you start venturing into My Little Pony territory, which some people do like, but there are actually, firm horse lovers out there who don't like that. They just like horses, don't really like ponies, or My Little Pony in that sense. And in fact, the only way I came up with my personal horse character was by looking at a horse plushie that I had and basically just copying that design. So yeah, I would say horses are probably one of the more challenging species to design. Not to mention when it comes to the actual fursuit making, a horse face shape is very different from a dog's, and if you don't do it just right, again, it looks off. You don't have to make a horse's face look perfect for it to read as a horse, as there's other features like a mane and how their ears are done that you can still kind of make it read as a horse with like a doggish face. But a truly horse face, like a real horse looking face in fursuit, is pretty difficult to get, thus pushing makers away from, creating them. Why don't people like buying them? Well, similar to the vein of cats, you do have a select group of people out there who love horses, but unlike cats, they're actually even smaller. Those horse people are much smaller in number. I know that there are people out there who love horses. In fact, I follow a few horse people on Twitter who all they want to post is horse art and stuff like that. So when you find them, they really will buy the horses. But there's just not a lot of them. And not saying that this is a huge factor, but you also have the human fear of horses. There are people out there who are just straight up afraid of horses, thus they don't like them. I haven't really met a furry who's afraid of horses, but I'm not saying that they don't exist. So you have that feature too. So combined with the fact that the designs for horses isn't always the best, and the fact that there just aren't a ton of horse fans, that's why they don't really sell as well. Number 3 on the list, continuing with the trend of, groups of animals, is going to be rodents. Now when I mean rodents, I'm sure you all know, I mean mice, rats, gerbils, guinea pigs, stuff like that. The small, the tiny little baby animals that live on this planet. If I had to pick one of the most popular amongst them, I guess I would probably pick rat, as I think I've seen more rat fursuits than any of the other species I just listed. So for this part in the list, I'll kind of be, deferring to the rats, but again, keep in mind that mouses, gerbils, guinea pigs, all the other small rodents out there, they also apply to this spot. Why don't makers like design making them? Well, similar to horses, I think that they're a little more difficult to design for different reasons, of course, though. Especially when you come to rodents. Rodents don't have, fuzzy paws kind of like this. They have little fleshy fingers. And not all makers like doing that. There are some makers who do like doing that, and they really go to town when they do that, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. So a maker's not really going to put in the time to design an animal that they don't want to make as a fursuit. And that's not the only fleshy part of rodents, as you have their ears and their tail generally too. So all of that can be off-putting to a maker who doesn't really want to, move away from the fuzzy aspect of the fursuit. From a design standpoint, Rodents do not have the most interesting natural color schemes. They generally tend to be one color. I mean, there's fancy rats out there and stuff who are, you know, spotted and stuff. And of course, as a fursuit character, you can design it to be whatever you want. But I find that rodent designs generally tend to be a little lackluster. I'm not sure if people are doing that on purpose or if that's just how they like their rodents, but I've never really seen a rodent pre-made that was like, you know, popping or something that even like looked really interesting. They all kind of seem a little flat. And again, it might just be the maker's taste, but when you have a flat design, you're not really gonna, you know, bring in the audience. Why don't people like buying them? Well, going down the train, similar to cats and horses, people interested in rodents are a very small group, smaller than the cat and the horse group. They are very small, I find. Generally, the people who really like rodents, the people who really want to wear rodent fursuits, own rodents. And there are actually not as many rodent owners out there as people probably tend to believe. And also generally, if there are people who own rodents, they probably love them a lot, which means they're probably going to shell out for a custom rodent versus getting a pre-made that they see online. I know a few people who have rodent characters and none of them are really pre-mades. They're all personal characters that they commissioned from makers. So that just goes to show that one of the reasons that rodents, rats, mice, and all that don't sell as well is because since they are such a specific species that only kind of, I guess you would say, true fans really care about enough to wear a fursuit anyway, they don't sell super well in auction. Okay, moving on, number 2 on the list. Heads up, this is the one where we get salty. Number 2 on the list is going to be unique animals. Now I know I have to elaborate on what I mean when I say that. When I say unique animals, I mean any kind of animal out there that is not mainstream. I'm talking your rhinos, your elephants, your giraffes, your moose, your okapi, any kind of weird species that you probably have only seen like one fursuit of in your entire time in the fandom. Why don't makers like to make these animals? I'm gonna be frank, they're hard to design. A lot of them are, especially when you get an animal that is so far like detached from like a dog, say an elephant. I'm probably gonna use elephant as one of the main examples just because it's such a unique animal and one very dear to my heart. Again, like I said, I have an elephant fursuit and I have made an elephant fursuit before. But elephants are hard to design. First off, they don't have any natural coloring to speak of, they're gray. So creating a unique looking elephant is pretty difficult. Not to mention the fact that when the pedal hits the metal, elephant fursuits are not super easy to make. They have the huge ears, they have the tusks, they have the big nose, and if you're an inexperienced maker, especially one that has not delved outside the canine feline kind of look, they're a pretty big challenge. Even for somebody like me, I had to learn a whole bunch of new things when making the elephant fursuit that I made, and I'm so happy that they all worked out, but again, the entire thing was a learning experience for me. So unique animals are pretty difficult to design, and if it's not the design, you know, the color sets tripping you up, it's actually making the animal into a fursuit that looks convincing. But of course, the big reason that makers do not make these animals, and now we're going to get into it, we're going to get salty here, is why don't people buy them? Here's the thing, guys, I don't know. I cannot tell you why people do not buy these species. Well, I can tell you, they don't buy them because they're not popular. These are animals that not a lot of people really like, which is so sad because personally, I would buy an elephant fursuit versus a dog any day. Elephants are so much more interesting than a dog. A dog has ears and a nose. An elephant has giant ears, big tusks, a huge trunk. That's so unique. So why don't people want them? I don't know. And I said, this third time I said, we're gonna get salty, so here it goes. These are unfortunately the species that everybody likes to preach that they want to see. Case in point, I just made a tweet a while back asking people what kind of pre-made they would like to see next, and you know what species I got? Just based on what people would like to see. I got gecko, moth, orca whale, stuff like that, species that I would love to make. But what happens is you make those species and then nobody buys them. Here's the thing, guys. People preach all the time that they want to see things other than dogs, other than cats, But if nobody's gonna buy these species, there's no reason for the maker to make them. There's no reason for us to put these time and effort and love into these species if they don't get the time of day. And it breaks my heart so much, because any day I would love to make a bird or a horse versus another dog. But I know a bird and a horse are not going to make me money where a dog is. So if any of you out there could tell me just why you don't want to buy these species, I really wish I knew, because I would love to make them, and I'm sure other makers would too, but we just can't. People, furries, you need to buy these species to show makers it's worth it to actually make them, to show them that you actually want to see these animals as fursuits. Because if you don't, you're just gonna end up with a fandom full of dogs in a couple years. That's just how it's gonna be. So again, I don't know why people don't buy these species. I really don't. They like to preach how much they love seeing them, because I can guarantee you, you might not want to buy an elephant fursuit, but you're going to definitely turn your head at one faster than you are at another dog. So that's my salty bit. As a maker who would love to make these suits but can't, just because I know I can't make money off them and I need to make money for a living, I'm begging you guys, if you like these species in any capacity, next time you see one up for sale, give it a chance, put in a bid, I don't know, make an offer, just show the maker that what they're doing is worth it. Okay, I promise I'm not going to get salty like that again. That just is an issue kind of near and dear to my heart, because again, I said I love every species on this list, and so I'm going to come to defend them a little bit. But we're getting towards the end, and so I'm going to do a quick honorable mention, well, two I guess, before we get into number one. Those honorable mentions are going to be reptiles and birds. Now, reptiles and birds are in the honorable mentions and on the list because I honestly don't ever see them as pre-mades. And so I can't really, judge an animal that I don't see sell as a pre-made. And that's actually kind of sad in and of itself. People don't even give these species the time of day to even try to sell. So I can't even make an accurate, judgment on seeing how they do or don't sell, which again is super sad to me because my main persona is a reptile and I'm going to own a bird suit soon in the future. So it's like, I'm just really sad that the two species that I love more than anything just don't even get a chance. But as for them themselves, both birds and reptiles are super fun to design. You can have so much fun with them. So if you're a maker out there and you're looking for a pre-made idea, try and give a bird or a reptile a chance so I can actually have something to make a comment on next time. Alright, we're to the bottom, and number one on this list, the dubious honor of being the quote-unquote worst species to make as a fursuit pre-made is going to be rabbit, bunny, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure you all know what a bunny is. They are rodents, maybe? I'm not sure. Don't call me out on that. They're small animals that are often kept as pets, and they are, one of the symbols of Easter. They got the big floppy ears and they go. Now, I don't mean to offend any rabbit furries or rabbit lovers out there. I'm just kind of telling it like it is. And with that said, why don't designers like to design them? Kind of maybe going back to the cats, I think this is another species, like I said, one of two, that makers probably do like to design. I'm not entirely sure. I don't see a ton of rabbit designs, but they're also not like, as pushed away as number two on this list. I think rabbits in and of themselves are okay to design. They don't have a ton of interesting natural colors. Of course, you do have a few out there that can get pretty, but most rabbits are generally like, one solid color or spotty or something like that. Just like with most small mammals, they're not super interesting to design naturally. You can design, of course, a pretty, colorful rabbit, but again, it's what it is. Rabbits don't have a ton of interesting markings to work with, so makers don't really want to put in the time with them, I guess. And why don't people like to buy them? Well, I normally at this point would say makers don't like to design them because they don't make money, but I feel like this is kind of like an unnoticed thing among the furry fandom, that rabbits don't sell well, but they just don't. I have never, I'm sure there's an exception, but I personally have never seen a rabbit fursuit sell well, ever. I've seen multiple rabbit pre-mades being made, and they just don't sell well at all. The hardest I have ever had selling a pre-made was a rabbit suit. It took me probably like 3 or 4 repostings to get that rabbit sold, it was a full suit. And even after that, once it was sold for bottom of the barrel, like a couple $100, I saw it get turned around and resold pretty quickly. So I just don't know what it is. Granted, I don't think that my rabbit design was the best, but probably the best-selling rabbit I've ever seen sold on pre-made or sold on auction was a combined effort between Sunny Valley Creations and Jill Costume, both big name makers. And even that rabbit didn't sell very well at all. It sold for like around $1,000. It's just, I don't know what it is about rabbit suits, but people really just don't want to buy them as pre-mades. Even custom rabbits aren't super, common. I could probably name like 1 or 2 actual rabbit furries out there who own fursuits. So again, kind of like other rodents, people are probably gonna push out money for their custom rabbit versus a pre-made. But I really can't give you an answer. I'm not a huge rabbit fan myself, so I'm kind of contributing to the problem, I guess. If I saw a rabbit pre-made, I would not buy it. I'm not a fan of rabbits. And again, I'm not trying to offend anybody who is a rabbit fan, but if you are a rabbit fan and you see a rabbit pre-made, maybe try and give that maker some money to show them that maybe rabbits can do a little better. I don't know. But yeah, that's number 1 on the list. So if you need to make a fursuit for money, don't make a rabbit. And that's it, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed this vid. I forgot to mention in the beginning of the vid, so I'm gonna mention it here now. Everything I just said is based on my own personal experience versus what I've seen in other auctions, and species is not the only contributor to how well a fursuit does in auction. Design is a huge part, so if any of your fursuit pre-mades are not selling well, maybe look over your design again, because again, it can be a make or break factor regardless of species. But yeah, I hope this didn't deter any of you from making any of the species on this list. You definitely should, and you definitely can. I'm not saying you shouldn't. As you heard in my number 2 little rant, I encourage you to make these species so they'll get a better chance of being bought, and it can show the makers that putting time into these really cool, unique animals is worth it. But yeah, that is it. I love all the animals on this species list, and I wish there were more of them, and if I have to be the one to make them all, I'm gonna do it. So I hope you enjoyed listening to me getting a little salty, because that's just how it is sometimes. So until next time, I'm not sure what the next video is gonna be about. It's gonna be about whatever I want it to be about at that point. So that is it for this video, and I will see you all next time.